Welcome back. All right, so today we're going to do a career video. We're going to talk about Bernie Federko, a Blues legend who holds records with assists and goals. Or I don't know if he holds the record for goals. I know assists some points he does when it comes to the St. Louis Blues. But either way, let's go ahead and jump into this. Federko drafted 7th overall in 1976, coming out of a fantastic season with the Saskatoon Blades. So St. Louis anxious to get him in the lineup, and he makes his debut in 76-77. 31 games played, 14 goals, 9 assists, 23 points. So showing some good offensive numbers there. And in the playoffs, he adds a goal and an assist for 2 points in 4 games. Now, there was many eras of the Blues that Federko would go through over his time there. 77-78, 72 games played, 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points. So decent second season, no playoff action to speak of. 78-79, he arrives. Very often you will see with star players that stardom could show through in year 3. Yes, there are the exceptions with players who immediately right out of the gate, you can see that superstar potential and the points can be excellent right out of the gate. But in Federko's case, it was year 3. 74 games played, 31 goals, 64 assists, which is 6th overall in the NHL, 95 points, which is 8th. He was 7th in Lady Byng voting. Now, one thing that is agreed upon whenever you look up anything Federko related is that he was an underrated player. He was underrated in part because St. Louis was in the Norris Division. The Norris Division was kind of secondary to the Smythe Division, and it didn't feel like the teams in the Norris were given as much attention outside of probably Toronto on the north side of the border and some of the follies of the Detroit Red Wings, Chicago Blackhawks, etc. But 79-80... 79 games played by Federko, 38 goals, 56 assists, 94 points. So he's 10th overall in points that year in the NHL. And in the playoffs, he adds a goal in 3 games, and he plays in the All-Star game that year as well. 80-81, 78 games played, 31 goals, 73 assists, which is 4th overall in the NHL. He would equal that mark later in his career, but that would be his career high. 104 points, which is 9th overall. In the playoffs, 11 games, 8 goals, 10 assists, 18 points. And he plays in an all-star game again. So the 18 points in 11 playoff games is excellent. Federko able to raise his game in the playoffs, but he's not on a St. Louis team that is a Stanley Cup contender. Not once we get into playoffs, you can see that they're not that in that same realm as the top teams of the time. 81-82, 74 games played, 30 goals, 62 assists, 92 points. Not too shabby. In the playoffs, he adds 3 goals, 15 assists for 18 points in 10 games. So, again, in the playoffs, his numbers are excellent. 82-83, 75 games played, 24 goals, 60 assists, which is 6th overall in the NHL. 84 points, and in the playoffs, he adds 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points in 4 games. So not as many playoff games, but still, he's above a point per game in the playoffs. 83-84, arguably maybe his best season. 79 games, 41 goals, the only time he scored 40 goals in his NHL career. 66 assists, which is 7th overall. 107 points, which is 9th overall. In the playoffs, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points in 11 games. He was 7th in Lady Byng voting that year. So he's not a Hart contender. He's not a guy who gets up for, gets nominated for trophies so much. But again, this is is he underrated because he plays in St. Louis? Yes, that's absolutely accurate. Then 84-85, 75 games played, down to 30 goals. 73 assists, which is 5th overall in the NHL. 103 points, which is 9th. He is very reliable when it comes to the passing. He is an elite level passer. 3 games in the playoffs, just the 2 assists to report there. Then 85-86, plays 80 games with St. Louis, 34 goals, 68 assists, which is 7th overall in the NHL, 102 points. So this is the only season where he doesn't miss at least 1 game. And in the playoffs, Blues go on a bit of a run. 19 games played by him in the playoffs, 7 goals, 14 assists, 21 points. So excellent run for him in the playoffs. And honestly, you had to feel coming out of that season like, hey, maybe St. Louis is going to do something here, right? He was 5th in Lady Byng voting and 10th in Hart voting. Then 86-87, he only played 64 games that year. His points totals dropped, 20 goals, 52 assists for 72 points. So no longer on pace for 100 points if he'd played all 80 games, but still a solid season. And in the playoffs, he adds 3 goals, 3 assists for 6 points in 6 games. Then in 87-88, plays 79 games, 20 goals, 69 assists, which is 7th overall in the NHL to go with 89 points. And then in the playoffs, he adds 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points in 10 games. He was 9th in Lady Byng voting that year, too. Did not win a Lady Byng trophy, but he was top 10 a lot. Then 88-89, plays 66 games with the Blues, 22 goals, 45 assists, 67 points. And in the playoffs, 10 games, 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points. Now, Detroit looking to build themselves into contention, looking to change things up a little bit. Veteran Federko is apparently available as he is traded June 15th to the Detroit Red Wings along with Tony McKegney. So these are 2 veterans going to Detroit in exchange for Paul McLean and Adam Oates. This is a trade that doesn't really go well for Detroit. And so for Federko, he's now being sent off to Detroit. He is now the number 2 center behind Yzerman. He's not going to get as much ice time. The same opportunities in Detroit he was getting in St. Louis. And it shows in the point totals. 73 games played, 17 goals, 40 assists, 57 points. And he would opt to retire when that season was done. So, great career with St. Louis, and then unceremonious ending to that career in Detroit. He ends up playing exactly 1,000 games. Full respect for retiring at exactly 1,000 games. 369 goals, 761 assists, which is 42nd all-time. 1,130 points, which is 60th on the all-time list. And in the playoffs, in 91 games, 35 goals, 66 assists, 101 points. He was more than a point per game in the playoffs. He didn't make it into the Hall of Fame until 2002. And the reason was, the argument became, did he play well enough for long enough to be a Hall of Famer? Was he dominant? He didn't win any trophies. Didn't win a cup. And so this was the argument, right? But in 2002, he does finally get into the Hall of Fame. It just took a little while for him to get in there. He was the first player in NHL history to score 50-plus assists 10 years in a row. So that's a pretty fun little number for him to have set for himself. Pretty sure he's been joined by other players since then. But yeah, that's a pretty solid record to have. And for Federko, if he had played on another team, if he played on a New York Rangers, Montreal, Toronto, something like that, would have got more attention than he got with St. Louis. But still, very good career. Did eventually get into the Hall of Fame. And there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding the career of Bernie Federko. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.